Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project live series. And great to have you with us today. Apologize for the delay on today's live screencast. Ran into a little bit of technical difficulties, but we got it worked out, and so glad to have you all here with us today. Um, I guess to start, we want this to be a dialogue for those folks able to join us today, and certainly after the fact, feel free to comment. And if you like what you're hearing today, you like what you see, please like and share this with folks as you can. My name is Bill Mendoza, and I'm Ogallala and Sechongu Lakota. I am a graduate research assistant here at Montana State University with the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project. And so with me today, I have Amy Andreas, and I'll give her a moment here to introduce herself and talk a little bit about who she is and where she's at. But she joins us today from Browning, Montana, up there on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. And so let me turn it over to Amy before I jump into a little bit overview on the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project. Go ahead, Amy.
I'm Amy Andreas. I have been living and working here on the Blackfeet Nation since 2001, and I have been an educator for 20 some odd years and taught in the school district as a reading specialist for about 13 years, and then was able to luckily acquire this position here at the high school in 2014 as the high school librarian.
Thanks so much for that, Amy. Appreciate that. And we might have been on mute that whole time. I don't know why this is switching back and forth to mute, but
Perfect.
yeah, no, I think we were good there. I have a different setup here, so definitely having to shift in and out. But today, before we jump into some of Amy's important work that is happening there in Browning, I wanted to just share with folks a little bit about the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project. This is such a great opportunity for teachers, thanks to being able to uh, receive a grant here at Montana State University from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Laura Bush 21st Century Librarian Project, our librarianship program. Um, we are excited to share that there's a scholarship associated with that, and this is for Montana and Alaska Native teachers. And the aim is to support teachers from those two states who hold a valid teaching license and who wish to obtain a fully online school librarian media certificate. And then you also have the option at your own cost, though, for a master's in curriculum and instruction after you complete that program. That's an additional 9 credits. So for the certification itself, the program is 21 credits and can be completed in as few as 3 semesters. More information, we'll be putting the links up as we talk here, and then also in the show notes for today can be found at our website. And I want to give you that real quick. It's a bit.ly link, so make sure you have the HTTP protocol that precedes this, but it's bit.ly uh, /MSU Library Media. And again, I'll put that link up in the chat as well as the show notes as we progress here throughout the show. And the deadline for that is April 1st, which is why we're doing this outreach today. And Amy also honors us by serving on our advisory board for that project. And so we're so happy to be able to have her here today. Again, if you have questions or comments regarding the scholarship in particular, please do give us a visit at that website, or you can email us directly at librarymedia@montana.edu. Again, that's librarymedia@montana.edu. So I guess with that, I want to turn to Amy to give us a little introduction, a little bit of background, if you will, on our video that we're going to show here. And it's a great program. I was able to watch the video myself in preparation for today's conversation, but certainly would enjoy watching it again. And so, Amy, if you can give us a little bit of introduction to this and kind of contextualize it for folks, and then we'll let them see for themselves.
Sure. When I came up to the high school in 2014, I kind of just realized that as all of us in library are learning and have learned over the past few years, our roles as librarian they've really changed. And we serve a lot of purposes within the school. And one of the things that I found was missing in our community at the time was an outlet for students to write and share what they'd been writing, and just letting students develop a voice. A lot of kids are interested in athletics and the traditional after school activities, and we were just looking to incorporate and start up some other alternative activities for students, to let everybody kind of find a place within the school. And we started up this, at first it was the No Name Poetry Club. We were like, we don't know what we are, but we just got together and had students write and share what they've written. And we worked on that all throughout the year. And then at the end of every year, we'd have a performance where they would just share their work to members of our community. And it was way more successful with the students than I ever thought. I hoped it would be successful. I never thought that like teenage boys would be all into like sharing what they've written and feeling really, confident in that. And so we were surprised by the initial success, and we've always been surprised at how many boys have participated, because we think of like poetry and writing, oftentimes we just assign it to girls and to women, and the boys have really kind of taken over in a way. So anyway, that's an introduction to our Rising Voices Club, but it grows and changes every year.
Great, thanks so much. Got a comment here too. I guess you too were on mute, so I think we're both on mute. So we might have to not in that segment there, thankfully, but on our introduction. So we might have to review some of that before we go. But Jay Gav, thanks so much for commenting. He definitely watched the video, and so yeah, let's jump right into it for folks who haven't got to see it, and we'll take it from there.
Great.
Never did we think our traditions would be overrun. Men made of armor with destruction in their eyes, they believed this world was theirs for the taking, ignoring our people's cries. When our people refused to move, they gave us land to fill in. Forced assimilation. They broke our homes and wanted our culture dead. Some of our old ways may have died out, but we're still here. We're still here. Nitsi, the best Benan.
Somebody tell me about being an adult. Boring. Taxes. So now give me some words. Any words? Style. Beatbox. In my own mind, that started to feel the anxiety from my childhood, or came in when I felt that I had responsibility to pay my taxes. And I was born with style to beatbox, but beatbox sometimes drops me, knock them off them socks, and drops the stocks to trop. On flows like ravens, crows flock to stalk to gawk. Non-proven thoughts about life and how you go through life, and actually how you seek your own truth, because you seek your own truth and your truth is very important. Poetry can actually heal. Poetry has the ability to give us the needs that we need in order to address the feelings that we feel. So we write poetry at times. We express from our heart. This is an encouragement to step out of your comfort zone just a little bit. Put something out there into the universe.
As dawn arrives, I am a man between the land and sky, built, tore down, and reborn.
When I came up to the high school, I realized that we didn't really have a lot of creative outlets for students. I just think that's really important in keeping kids in school. It's a collection of writers, grades 9 through 12, and we just really try to encourage them to find their own voice, to put their own words down on the page and to become comfortable expressing those words.
Originally, poetry wasn't really like a huge thing for me. It's easier putting it into something that I have the power to share with other people rather than trying to explain myself in a conversation, which I find harder. I lay in the dark at night and think my brain is tied in knots and my skin is crawling trying to get away, as if it was that easy.
You know, everybody needs to find their home in their school, something that keeps them there, for them to realize that they have something valuable to say and contribute, whether it's humorous or whether it's serious or just reflective, that they finally realize what I have to say matters and I can share that with my community and they will value that.
I'm so confused on the idea of trust.
Poetry, you know, you can always go back and change a line, you can always go back and fix something or twist it around, or you might have a meaning when you wrote it and then go back and look at it like months later and have a completely different view of it, and I think that's pretty cool.
I want to stop thinking like a 16-year-old. I want nothing more than to feel complete. Feeling nothing is what I feel most.
Kids that are really soft-spoken at the beginning of the year, sometimes by the end of the year, I just feel like they've gained a level of confidence in what they have to offer. I think that transfers to hopefully whatever their next educational step is.
Being a part of the poetry club helped me be outspoken more. I like when people share their creativity and their poems with one another, and it brings inspiration. It's kind of like music to my ears.
It helps me stop bottling emotions up. I wouldn't get so mad at things.
I love that part.
In my rest, everything is better in my dreams, and every time I'm awake, it makes me want to sleep forever.
Good one. Yeah. You have powerful, powerful writing. I would personally like to see more inflection here, like hitting it here and stopping maybe, and letting the audience just soak up that, the mystery or whatever it might be.
And whatever they're creating over the course of the year, I want them to know these things that we're working on, you're going to share with your community at large. We're going to invite the whole community to come in and watch what you do and to celebrate what you do.
I like performing. There's sort of an adrenaline to it, but it's also scary because I tend to stumble over my words a lot, and doing that in front of a crowd is more or less what gets to me about it.
I think it helps us be more comfortable about speaking to other people that you don't know about things that you wouldn't really talk to anybody about. And it just proves that your voice needs to be heard and people need to hear what you got to say. My name is Wesley Pree, and this poem I wrote about racism because I go through it a lot with me and my family, and so I just thought I would let it out on paper. Racism makes me sick, so why is it still around? Thinking about it at night all out in my room, can't help but frown. Being black does not decide my heart. Being brown does not make up my mind. So to know me, you have to learn me. For one, my skin is a part of me, but it is not everything of who I am. For who I am is who I decide to be.
A lot of times people of color, Native Americans especially, aren't successful and they don't get a place to stand and speak.
I want to be great. I want people to look at me and see who I really and truly am. Native people, they always think that, oh, they're just natives, they're just going to stay on their reservation their whole lives. And we're here trying to build up a good education and change the world just like any other race would want to. I think in this moment right now, as I'm writing, I feel free.
Being Native just inspires me. I'm different from the rest of the world, so why not write it down on a piece of paper and express myself through it? I don't have the most perfect family. we're going through a lot right now. And when you're so stressed out that you just have to have an escape, there's always poetry. Numbers are selfish. They do what is best for themselves. Can you blame them? Numbers get hurt the most. Numbers feel the most. Numbers thrive to be the skinniest number in the room. Numbers try to be the most mentally stable, beautiful. In all reality, numbers are the most insane. We're all trying so hard to become something other than what we are. We're all trying to become human when all we are is numbers. Numbers with feelings. The numbers of time made me unlove you. And at that moment, I've discovered I'm just a number with feelings. Rising Voices has benefited me in so many ways. I have a way to express myself that I can be myself in.
Everything we do, you have to have communication. And so practicing that, getting in front of people, what's a better way of doing that than expressing yourself through something that you love doing?
Hello, my name's Wolf Eyes, and my government name is Haley. So I didn't put a title on this because this is just the beginning of something that's supposed to become. Nitsi the best binan. We're still here. Like the soil, the water, and the rocks. Every animal and every man was made equally as one. Have no doubt. A seventh generation is here and coming on strong. Restoring our nation to its previous glory won't take long. We're still here. Nitsi the best binan.
Great, tremendously powerful. Yeah, we got some great comments from folks in the chat too. Jay Gab, thanks for chiming in on some of the content there. Especially one there. Talking about your voice needs to be heard and people need to hear what you have to say. Amy, you talked a lot about hope and voice, in some of our preliminary conversations, and so, just wanted to, ask you, what is Rising Voices in that sense of where that name came from, and the effort around it, and tell us a little bit about those who are involved in the effort. I think this is one project, an award-winning project, and maybe you can enlighten us on that as well, and then its genesis as well too. Would love to hear about that. I'm sure folks would find that very informative.
Like I said, we really just started off as this group of kids writing, and if you're from Montana, you're probably familiar with Humanities Montana, and I'd certainly like to give them a shout out for libraries such as ourselves in rural environments where we don't have a lot of money to bring people to us. Humanities Montana was always very helpful in helping me get writers to come and work with the students. And they would bring, anyone I asked for within their organization. They've, always said, okay, how can we make this happen? So Taj was a writer that we worked a lot with, and he was in the film, Taj Kellen, and Lowell Yeager, and Mandy Broadus. We've brought a lot of different speakers and poets and writers in to work with our students, and sometimes even just to listen to them and to give them a little feedback. But programs like Humanities Montana were extremely helpful in getting our students to see, hey, this is pretty cool. And there are people that come from outside of our community to come work with us. And so this must be important. And oftentimes those folks would come back and join us at the end of the year when the kids had their performance ready. And they just started, I think over the years, they've started to realize that, you know, the community really respects this work. They respect what the students create over the course of the year. And, you know, the magic created itself. Our students are amazing. And the vulnerability that they share in their writing, you know, is touching. It, no matter where you're from, it will appeal to you and to your heart. And so that's been the success of the program and why I think it's been successful. But we've certainly had a lot of help along the way, whether it's from our English department, different members in the English department, helping and co-sponsoring meetings after school, or helping us with our end of the year production. But certainly Humanities Montana has been extremely helpful. And we were contacted by MAPS Media Project, and they wanted to come up and work with the students and do some sort of a film. And when they heard about Rising Voices, they thought, well, this is a natural fit. So they used our students, kind of taught them a little bit about directing and editing and filming, and helped them to create this piece about their club. So it was pretty cool.
Great. Thanks so much. Now, I see that you're broadcasting again for the introduction. We were muted, and so you know you were there in Browning. I assume that's the high school there. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're here in the library.
Yeah, great. And yeah, the library looks like a wonderful space. And you know, given that we're talking about working in tribal libraries, you know, how was this effort connected to the library? And you know, was that purposeful? Was that just, you know, when it came about, you know, what was that synchronization there?
When I took this position, like I said, in 2014, a long-term, you know, librarian and been in this position for 20 some odd years. And the library was, as a lot of programs were in and around 2014, 2015, ready for a change, ready to kind of go from that quiet space where, you know, if you just went to study or hide in a corner, to a place that was alive and kind of bursting with energy. And when I came here, you know, it was an empty palette and ready for, you know, us to do whatever we wanted with. And so we really tried to, we spent a lot of time weeding the collection and trying to make the collection more like a bookstore here for our students. And we wanted to, I keep saying we, but I wanted to find programs that would, like I said, help other students find a home in the school. Not everybody is an athlete. Not everybody has, you know, rodeo or things after school. You know, there was a large segment of our students that needed someone to recognize their talents. And so I kind of have made that the focus of our library program here at the high school, is to develop unique extension activities for students that give them a reason to be here at the high school, that make them feel supported and welcome, and that their talents are appreciated. So that's kind of the goal of our high school library program here, is that we want to provide experiences for students and give them a chance to shine in ways that they maybe haven't found a space somewhere else in the school to do it.
Oh, that's great. So like, you know, tremendously powerful imagery, you know, incorporated into that video, and just being able to see the community be involved as well. You know, how has this impacted, you know, not only those students? I mean, it was so surreal to kind of see a point in time when we were this was pre-COVID, you know, folks were able to be together like that, you know, and so you know, this was a couple of years back, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how has that impacted those students and yourself maybe, and as well as the community, kind of being able to see this now a couple years out?
Yeah, we have just, as of this week, returned to school after a year apart. So last year in March, we all, as everybody experienced, you went away for what you thought was going to be a couple of weeks, and it turned into a full year. So just this week, we have returned to a hybrid learning schedule. So I met some new students today that I hadn't had a chance to meet yet. And we are all talking about how surreal this is, that we feel like, oh, I just saw you, but that was a year ago. And, COVID really impacted our community, and we did what we had to do to keep our elders safe. And unfortunately, we lost 48 members in our very small community over the past year to COVID. And it had a tremendous impact on our staff, here at the school, and our students and their families. And it was traumatic for this community in many, many ways. We're, isolated, rural, and a very small, tight-knit community, and a lot of students being raised by older members of their households. And so, there was a lot of fear involved in what happens if I get COVID. So a lot of our students have been just closed in with their families for the past year. And, this is a real spring awakening for everyone, kind of coming out of their shell this past year. I did have the poetry group going over online throughout this past year, and we've had a wonderful group, and it's been just as wonderful as they always are, but it was just online. And I think that outlet was even more important to them at that time, to find some community that wasn't just academics, and that you could, talk about other things.
Yeah. No, that's so true. I mean, I'm an artist myself, and I can't put two words together in the way that these young people do beautifully. But that's a creative skill, but it's also a learned skill. And so I think them being able to sustain that over the challenges that COVID placed on not only their creativity but continuing to build their skill sets is so important. And to that, I guess to that point, there's a lot of creativity that happened out of that space. Is there anything to be said about, anything different that came out as a result of COVID? You talked about, the tragedy that many tribal communities have experienced as a result of COVID, disproportionately being affected by it. 48 doesn't sound like a big number if you're talking about the municipalities of this country, the more urban centers, if you will. But when you're talking about Indian country, that's a big number. So what can be said about those dynamics and the experiences of your students?
I think what I've seen and heard from them is, as if our community wasn't already tight knit enough, like that families have grown even stronger, and grandkids that maybe were pulling away from the grandparents naturally at this age, have strengthened that bond. That bond has been strengthened again because they saw how fragile that life could be. And they started to see around them, the risk of them losing a family member so suddenly to an illness like this. And so I think gratitude that's something I've noticed that has come out of this with all of our students, is, yeah, it was rough, but, we all still had each other, is the way I've heard a lot of them talk about it.
That's great. So there are a lot of well, let's save that one. Let's just save that one. I was going to ask about all the other work going on there, but I want to first ask any of our participants if you have any questions for Miss Andreas or regarding the Rising Voices program or the video itself, please do type those into the chat and we can get those answered today. Let's shift gears a little bit, Amy, and talk about your journey there within what is essentially the Blackfeet Indian community. And have you always been there? Did you kind of emerge in this community? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because we are, the title of today's series was, working in Indian country, specifically tribal libraries. So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I moved to Montana in 2001 from the Midwest, and had grown up in a rural area and then spent my young adult years in an urban inner city area, and was kind of approaching my late 20s thinking, oh, I think I want to settle in, a remote area again. This is what I want for me in the rest of my life. And that brought me out to Montana. And I had just completed a master's degree as a reading specialist. So a position opened in Browning. I looked at the topo maps and I thought, oh, yeah, I could live there. And so we came out expecting, to have this great educational experience, live here for a few years and probably move on and settle down somewhere. But I came here and my mind was blown away by this place, and the experience was like none other. So we stuck around and yeah, I mean, if you've ever visited the Blackfeet Nation, it's just a tremendously amazing place. So I'm gonna get emotional.
Yeah. No, it's certainly. I can hear it in your voice. I could see it on the video. It, it's clearly a calling for you, and I think others, sometimes intuitively feel that calling, and yet it's also difficult work. The emotions wouldn't be just underneath the surface for you or anybody else who engages in the network without it being tremendously challenging as well as moving at the same time. So, like in your experiences, what are some of those challenges and in the work in the community? But as I think you've already alluded to, there's some rewards there too that are pretty powerful. That's what gives us the emotion. Yeah, if you could talk a little bit about that.
Well, for sure, working with young people or, being an educator, we all know is extremely challenging on the surface. And in conjunction with that, it's like the most rewarding thing that you could ever do. And the challenges here, of course, there are unique challenges in Indian country, and but there's also unique benefits like no other as well. So we have high rates of poverty, we're isolated, drug and alcohol abuse, and just the effects of long-term effects of colonialism and everything that has happened to this community historically. Everyone is still feeling in this community, and those impacts don't go away quickly. And our students, I've seen a huge change in this community over the past 20 years and see the resilience that is out there. But it is, I've got a phone call coming in here and it's distracting me.
Oh, that's okay.
So anyway, yeah, I'm sorry. What didn't I answer?
The challenges, the rewards, how trying to a part of the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship grant is, working towards ensuring that we have librarians in rural tribal communities. Ideally, that's what the grant is focused towards. And so what does those prospective librarians need to know about the environment, both in terms of those challenges as well as the opportunities that await them in those kinds of environments?
Well, I mean, certainly, like I said, the challenges are there, they're here, but I can't even believe when I get paid, I'm always surprised because I'm like, oh, someone's going to pay me to do this? This is
Uh-huh.
amazing. And I can't think of a better job where you spend your day working with young people, developing unique ways for them to interact and learn from the world. I mean, what's better than that? So the challenges are, budgets that are shrinking, and you have to find ways to get creative. So you find programs like Humanities Montana, or you beg and borrow from your communities, or you take up artists and writers and community members and, ask them to donate their time to your projects. But, funding is a challenge. Being isolated is a challenge because it's hard to get people here. It costs money to bring people to yourself, to your communities. But, the rewards are off the chart. And I can't think of a better job or a more interesting job in education because there's never a boring day. And your options are really limitless.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. I mean, the idea that there's never a boring day for a librarian, kind of goes at the maybe stereotypical or misunderstanding of libraries, and that they're quiet, dormant places, and so you know thinking about the teacher that is considering applying for the IPSL scholarship that might have the same inspiration that you do, how does that role, how has it changed for you? I know in some of our preliminary conversations you talked about kind of it feeling like sometimes you're a counselor, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes that these are, your library in particular is a place for these students as a sanctuary, and a place for them to come and process and decompress. And so talk about those different kinds of roles as opportunities, or if not points of consideration for future librarians.
Yeah, I think that to me is what the modern librarian is. You are basically someone that's, you're helping students navigate the world, whether it's information literacy, digital literacy, educational opportunities after, high school, developing the schools they need to be successful here. You're like a concierge of services that a student needs to be successful in life. And that, comes from books, and it can come from, technology. It can come from navigating their own personal spaces to navigating, people in the community and their cultural identity. Like, that's the beautiful thing about this job. I feel like I kind of joke that I'm like Siri, like, just ask me anything and we'll see what we can do with it. And that is what I feel like the role of a modern school librarian is you really got to get to know your community and find out, well, where is the need? What is the need in this building and in this school community, and fill that role. I mean, you will always make yourself indispensable if you can do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, that just totally speaks towards like the dynamic nature of what it might have taken to not only support students in the Rising Voices, I think club is what you referred to it as, but it's a writing group. And so, but that isn't the only thing that's happening there in our Browning community. What are some of the other clubs or organizations and efforts? I know one of the things you talked about for prioritizing for the upcoming years is preservation of sacred sites and lands. And so if you could talk a little bit about that work, but also any other organizations or efforts that are underway there.
Like I said, with all of the programs that kind of come out of the library, I just look for where there's a need. And one of our issues in our community that's been important over the past few years is the long-term protection of the Badger 2 medicine area. Mm-hmm. You know, you can look it up online. There's some information out there. It's a beautiful, pristine, amazing place that has had leases since the 80s out there on the land. It is not a part of the Blackfeet Nation proper. It is adjacent to the Blackfeet Nation, but it is part of their traditional homeland, and it's got a significance as far as religious ceremonies and various other things. So, you know, a lot of our students over the years have talked a lot about, you know, no DAPL and, you know, the Dakota's access pipeline. And, you know, we have our own access pipeline issue in our neighborhood. So we've started the Badger to Medicine Society, which is kind of drawn to be like a traditional society. So we're trying to mirror what those traditional Blackfeet societies would have, and let students find their role within this in working for long-term protection of the Badger 2 medicine, and really just trying to get, there are efforts out there to protect it, and but there are a lot of older folks and a lot of people from outside our community. And what I felt like was missing was the voice. We go back to voices here. Was the voice of our youth in protecting this area. And so that's one new initiative that we've got going this year. And I'm happy to be back in the building where we can now have speakers and people come in and work with the students. But the Badger 2 Medicine Society, we have like a student staff book club that we have ongoing all the time, where we, you know, focus on Native authors primarily, and bring the staff and students together to read and discuss books throughout the year. We have, you know, I'm starting up an initiative this year that's all about like fat biking and like getting outside and being on the land and just being out there. And we've got a new ski program also that's totally focused on just being on the land and getting young people outside to just spend some time getting to know the places around them. So, I mean, there's a multitude of small things like that that are not traditionally associated with the library. But again, like I said, I feel like you're about providing opportunities, educational opportunities for students. And, you know, we can all think of like 1,000 different things that you're passionate about and the students are passionate about, and find where those overlap and go after them.
That's great. I mean that's so important. You know, it's finding that common ground. In some respects, low-hanging fruit. You know, while keeping an eye on those bigger aspirations. You know, I'm sure you know, some of those policy efforts, as well as advocacy, is, you know, larger scale education that goes beyond the connection of youth and elders that you talk about. You know, but you know, that takes kind of operational acumen, you know, if not a skill set. And is there anything that can be said about, you know, that being unique or different within your community, the community of the Blackfeet people? You know, how do you get that kind of community organization done, and is it any different? I know earlier you talked about partnerships, you know, so what does that look like in a tribal community?
It really is all about partnerships, and I think any teacher that's lucky enough to work in a tribal community, you know, you have to first. I mean, when I came here, you know, I certainly had a lot to learn, and I'm still learning. And I think as someone that comes into a community, a Native community, and is non-Native, your role is to listen and to observe. And I'm still doing that 20 years later. And you start to realize, you start to recognize resources in the community. One thing that I think is extraordinarily unique in Indian country is people want to give to their children, their grandchildren, and the members of their community, more so than any other place I've ever lived in my life. They're dedicated, and if you know so and so can provide this, then you go after that and you ask them, and they'll always step up, you know. And that's the way my experience has been. And you just pay attention, you throw it out there. I always feel like you throw everything out there that you can. And if 3 out of those 10 things stick, well, then 3 things stuck and you have resources there. And you're definitely going to have to do that as a librarian in these communities, is go out and look for the help wherever you can find it, and people will come to you.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's definitely one of the aspects of Indian country and rural culture, is very similar as well, to be able to kind of mobilize in those ways.
Mm-hmm.
Early in our conversation, Amy, there was some emotions that came to the surface, and I wanted you to intentionally kind of get away from those a little bit so that we could process some of that. What were you thinking about in that moment that stirred the heart in that way? Uh, what keeps you up at night and gets you up in the morning? When you kind of have to face those heart pooling feelings, I guess.
You're
Yeah.
going to take me back there. No,
Oh no.
all you have to do is look around this community. I'm sitting here right now looking out at the Rocky Mountain front. I wish you guys could see what I'm seeing right now. It's just tremendously beautiful place. And that video gets me every time because I know those kids so well and I know what they're doing now. And some of them are just now graduating. And it's great to look back and reflect on different aspects of their journeys. And being in this community as long as I've been now, I'm starting to teach kids of students that I taught when I first came here. So, you know, just seeing these people grow and develop into such amazing individuals, you just realize how lucky you are to get to journey along with them for a while. And I think really all you do is stay out of their way and let them shine.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the true definition of empowerment. The idea that we can't empower anybody, only those individuals and communities can empower themselves. And so, given that as a precipice for that, big concept of Indian self-determination and sovereignty, how does the library operate in kind of that? You talked about the impacts of colonialism. You talked about partnerships. I'm sure that extends on to like Blackfeet Community College there, a tribal college within the Blackfeet Nation. When you think of sovereignty, the tribal libraries and archives, is kind of focused on tribes, taking more self-determination and more autonomy in this space. What do you experience as a high school librarian with a public school, state chartered entity on
Uh-huh.
a sovereign nation? What does that stir in terms of concepts for you?
Wow, that's a big topic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
um, I think that's something that the tribe does beautifully. And because because it is a public school, but yet it is, nearly 100% native, um, you forget that we're connected to other schools sometimes in the state. A lot of our educational initiatives, and I don't know if this is what you're getting at, but Daryl Kipp, who was a language leader in this community, Blackfeet man, awesome person, once said, you don't ask permission, just do it. And that's something that our school district and our community college is doing right now. Like, they see the direction that things need to go in and they move in that direction and do what is best for our students. And I've really been impressed with our community college over the past few years and got some really great leadership in there now as well. And the work of Aaron LaFramboise at the BCC, and just taking charge and protecting what we know needs to be protected and nurtured.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think, being cognizant that that's a big question, it's one that we never get to ask of librarians or teachers, or you know, folks who are kind of immersed in setting that foundation for our young people, our emerging leaders, and really the backbone of tribal society. And so, that's a big part of this series is getting to explore some of these big concepts through the lens of a librarian. We had guest, yeah, Matthew Rantanen, and talking about the future of tribal libraries, and he too touched upon the importance of language preservation and revitalization and the infrastructure considerations that are needing to happen for tribal libraries to kind of move in an accelerated fashion into this 21st century. And so the dynamic nature of libraries and the way that you've been able to create there, from not only having books in the hands of students, but having access to digital platforms such as the Rising Voices video and things like that, are so important. I couldn't agree more. And thank you for sharing your perspective there. Uh, what else needs to be said that we might not have talked about, uh, up to this point, Amy, in terms of uh, working within tribal libraries or Indian country per se, that you'd like to share with folks?
I think just you can't emphasize enough the importance that students see themselves and their families and their community in your library, even just the physical space, that it needs to reflect the culture of your students, and that you, especially in Montana and Alaska, even though we're on the Blackfeet Nation, there's a lot of other tribes represented in our community, and our students that may feel, very committed to two different tribes. And so just keeping in mind that, it's extremely important to implement culture in every single activity that you do as a teacher in a native school, and to support their ability to explore or to learn more about their culture or a related culture within those activities. And because that knowledge, empowers them to go off and seek other things. And they're doing a beautiful job of that in this community across the board, across all of our schools right now.
Yeah, no, appreciate that so much. And so, Amy, how can, we're going to have the Instagram up there, so much powerful knowledge, students' poems, students' art, community glimpses into the Blackfeet community through that Instagram, by extension of the high school. How can folks help? How can they reach you? What do you want to share with folks more broadly?
Well, certainly, I mean, they can follow, kind of our efforts on the Instagram page. I feel like, we are awakening from a year-long slumber here, and getting fired up to get moving with the students again, because being virtual has been a challenge. And they can reach me through Instagram, or just basic contact information from the high school here in Browning. And we're always looking for people that have ideas or have thoughts to share, or would love to work with the kids. So we're we're open we're open for some support at all times.
Great. Thanks so much, Amy. Well, that brings us to the end. I've been talking with Amy Andreas, a library media specialist from Browning High School on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. And we also started off talking about the Indigenous Perspectives in School Librarianship Project, specifically the scholarship opportunity that closes on April 1st. And just really encourage folks to, especially teachers, licensed teachers from Alaska or Montana, this is who the scholarship is available to be able to access that opportunity. And you can find more information about that on our website. It's a bit.ly link. Make sure that you have the HTTP protocol in there, but it's bit.ly/MSU Library Media. Again, that is bit.ly/MSU Library Media. Well, thank you folks for joining us today. Miss Andreas, thank you so much for offering your time, for
You.
joining us today and be able to talk about the important work that's happening there on Blackfeet. And love to catch up with you in the near future to find out what's next on the horizon for you and your students.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everybody and have a great day.